Well, hello. We're here with Nate again, right after our Saturday evening message, and week 5 of the 6-week
Almost there.
Blueprint series. It seems like it's gone really quick, but as usual, we'd love to just unpack a few things with you after you've preached the sermon here today, and have a few questions for you. Ready?
Come on, man.
All right, let's do it. I love where you started, by the way. You had that football, and I know the kind of internal working title is Back to the Basics, and we talked about getting back to the basics here today. And you know, I played basketball in high school. I know you played basketball too. And when I hear back to the basics, I go to sports. You know, so there's going to be some sports analogies. I'm just we'll just warn everybody. But you know, I think of my time playing basketball, and there's always times to work on the plays or the game plan. But then there's always a steady diet throughout the season of working on the fundamentals, right? The basics, the dribbling, the passing, the shooting. And there's some basics here that we've talked about within Nehemiah. So like what really are the basics that we should glean from the story of Nehemiah, and how can we kind of apply those?
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of times at least I've read Nehemiah first several times, especially younger, because, you know, it's just kind of he's a man's man. He's a governor. He's stepping up. He's sacrificing. You just see this guy going for it, and you think it's all on leadership, there is leadership.
Sure. Yeah.
But this time around, the more I've sat with it, the more I've realized how much this is actually about spiritual discipline alignment to God. You know, he starts with prayer, fast, prays, mourns, then he leads.
Right.
You know, then he was doing different things, and then he assesses all the broken walls. He doesn't just show up, hold a press conference, and think, I'm going to rally the troops. He takes the time to inspect. He reflects, and he thinks, and then every time he faces obstacles, he prays. And then this one, I thought this was cool too. He gets Ezra to bring the Bible out. And I just went, a guy who knows who he really is in God is okay allowing somebody else to do something that takes center stage.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm the governor. Ezra's the priest.
Yeah.
You bring out the law.
Yeah.
And I just go, you know, and then how his love for God's word, how he just goes, the joy of the Lord, you know, and he shapes the community, you know, through that. And then just the humility that he has. This time around going through Nehemiah, I think this is why reading the Bible is so much fun. We're in different seasons. I'm sure like we've read a book of the Bible when we're younger, and we rallied to it for this, and then when you become this season of life, you read it in a different way. I think you get something new. I think that's just where the Spirit just speaks to us in different seasons. And so for me, one of the biggest things I'm just taking away is how much this book really is about the God-centric life. Not, and almost in some ways, leadership is just a byproduct. Yeah. Like it's like, oh yeah, and here's how you get
byproduct of some of those basics that
of all these things. Yeah. So these are some of the big things I'm taking away from this of going. Yeah. I'll never get away from my need for God's word. I'll never get away from my need for His community, and there won't ever be a point as a Christian that I won't need humility. Yeah. So good. It won't get it. I won't graduate. As much as that sounds weird, man. We won't.
I picture Nehemiah saying, when Ezra brings out the Bible, saying, "This is a Bible."
This
sort of like
this is a football.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, you have to go watch the sermon. But we'll move on. So one of the themes that I see constantly in one of the chapters you brought up was chapter 9, and in chapter 9, it's crazy. I actually jotted some of them down of this pattern of disobedience and then God's mercy and forgiveness following that. It's crazy. So in verse 16, they're talking about people recalling the amazing, miraculous things God did for their ancestors, from Abraham, Moses, all that. You know, but then they said, but my ancestors were stubborn and stiff-necked, some translations call it, you know. But then right in verse 17, but it says, but you are gracious, merciful, and slow to anger. Then they go on. Verse 26 says, but despite all this, they were still disobedient. But then verse 27 says, but when they cried out to you, you delivered them. You know, there's this repeated pattern of their disobedience and God's mercy. And I'm just, what are we supposed to make of all that or take away from that?
Yeah. To me, I think especially coming out of this season, we have our lives so organized. We're so calculated that I think part of the disorientation in this season is we've had to cry out more than ever before.
For sure.
I know I have.
Yeah,
I
for
shared
sure.
that a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
I know we're revamping our setting the table plans, but it's kind of hard when you work on something for 3 years, a lot of prayer, a lot of thinking, a lot of gleaning, trying to be a great steward, and then in one moment, Mark Clayton shared it in his
Yeah,
story, right?
That was a good story.
They're both working, and then he's like, we can't both work and e-learn. The girls at home, like, it's not going to work.
A lot of people face that.
And so I think even to that point of, like, it's not even just our rebellion, but going, will we cry out to the Lord?
Yeah.
And somebody said this, it's not will you believe in God, it's will you believe God. And there's a difference
That's good.
I believe in God, right, but do you believe God?
Right.
Now? Do you believe Him, and will you walk in it? Not do you believe in the idea of Him, do you believe Him?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in all of chapter 9, Nehemiah's calling to go, believe God.
Mm-hmm.
Believe God.
Yeah.
Put this as the bedrock and believe in Him.
Yeah.
And walk in His way. So I think that's, and you just see it time and time again, God's faithfulness.
Yeah.
He keeps coming.
When they cried out to Him,
He showed up.
He's faithful, and He showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. I met an old pastor years ago. He's from Wales, and he was talking about this thing of mercy, and when you cry out to God, God is merciful. And he said sometimes the English language just doesn't do it justice to explain it. He's from Wales, and in the Welsh language, mercy, he described as this. He said, God, with shuffling footsteps, arrives slowly at the place of anger to describe mercy. This is so eloquent. I just love that. And you see that when people cry out, and He's always given a second chance to those
coming,
people.
man.
So, well, to move on, and really on this theme of obedience, which is throughout the whole book of Nehemiah, you see when God's people let their guard down. Mm-hmm. The next sports analogy is like when we're teaching basketball, we're always taught to keep our guard up, our arm bar up, to keep the enemy away, to keep your guard up. But you see that, what happened to God's people when they put their guard down. So how do we practically keep our guard up during this time?
Yeah, I think, this is where, one, you're absolutely right. And it doesn't mean that you're not thinking and protecting and being wise for your family and looking out and having an eye, and stuff. But really, I think the guard remains up. A lot of times we won't let people close in. And what I've realized is this, I won't let people close if I'm not experiencing the closeness of God.
Yeah.
But what I've realized is the more I practice the presence of God, we heard Rich Villodas talk about the more, Psalm 27, the more I dwell in the presence of God.
That's powerful.
The more I'm able to dwell with others, and I'm able to dwell with myself. And again, it doesn't mean I'm not calling out something that's wrong, but I'm just not so antsy. And I'm not finicky. And this season has produced that in us, and we're going, this is why, man, if we're really going to be able to have our guard up in a healthy way, it comes from dropping our guard with the Lord, dwelling with Him. And then we can be in some tough spots.
Yeah.
We can walk through some tough conversations and make some tough decisions.
Yeah. I love what you said is, in order to keep my guard up against the enemy, you were saying I really need to, what I heard was let your guard down with other people to be able to open up to them and share, some things with them and invite people into that.
Yeah.
That you could strengthen yourself with to be able to keep your guard up against the enemy.
That's
Just letting your guard down with some people close to you. And like you said,
and it's not a lot. I mean, sometimes we feel like we got to be like an open book to everybody. It's like, no.
Yeah.
There's just a small crew that you want to get pretty vulnerable with, and then the other ones you want to be able to love well.
Yeah. Yeah. But we only have a few seconds left. I know we have 1 week left of actual preaching. We have 2 weeks left of group discussion. So folks don't.
Finish
these are
strong.
some of the little things that we talked about to be able to keep your guard up. It's not forsaking these assemblies with your group and to meet with them and discuss this, and then be here next week for another powerful sermon. And it's going to be great. So looking forward to that. I know you are too. So
Thanks, y'all.
God bless you guys.